As part of our additional tax cuts, we will end all taxes on overtime. You know what that means? The people who work overtime are among the hardest working citizens in our country. And for too long, no one in Washington has been looking out for them. It's time for the working man and woman to finally catch a break, and that's what we're doing, because this is a good one. And I think it's going to be great for the country.
Donald Trump from Tucson, Arizona. Yesterday, it's on to Vegas. Tonight, Kaylee, and we bring in Gregory Korte for more with his eyes on the campaign trail. Bloomberg senior White House and politics correspondent. Great to see you, Gregory. That's going to play pretty well, I'm thinking, when he gets to Las Vegas, where the no taxes on tips was first born.
Yeah, we've had a number of these surprise tax announcements that come seemingly randomly in the middle of Trump rally speeches. You know, if you've ever watched a Trump rally, which Trump wants us to do, and now Kamala Harris would like us to do as well, you know that they can sometimes be a stream of consciousness, right? And so when we get a brand new policy proposal like this, it's a little surprising to us.
Does the campaign know it's coming?
I would have to think so.
Okay.
If you take Trump at his word, he said he talked about this with some economists who think it's a great idea. I will say I don't think that that opinion is going to be universal among economists. Remember that part of the reason why Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act in the first place to require time and a half overtime was a concern that if employers can make their workers work 80 hours a week, that's a whole nother job that somebody else doesn't get. And so if you create incentives for workers to work more overtime, that could have an effect on the overall employment picture. Not to mention the budgetary effects. Now, we haven't scored this one yet, but at Bloomberg News, we've looked at every single tax proposal that Trump has put forth, and it tallies up to more than $10 trillion over the next 10 years of adding to the deficit. That's the no tax on tips, the extension of the Trump tax cuts from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, and also the no taxes on Social Security. That's another proposals he's made, and reducing the corporate tax rate down from 21 to 15%. That's a lot of tax giveaways that he's given out, and we still have almost less than 2 months till Election Day.
Well, and of course, his campaign and other Republicans will argue growth will help offset some of that in spending cuts, though by our own calculations, there is not going to be enough non-defense discretionary spending over the next 10 years to actually pay for that, even if you cut it all to zero. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, does want some similar tax cuts. She, too, is supportive of no tax on tips. She has ideas of how to pay for that, raising the capital gains tax and raising the corporate tax rate, for example. Do we expect she might come around to this no tax on overtime as well? Because Donald Trump said no tax on tips first before she adopted that.
A day later.
and that's something that Trump will point out with some regularity, that he views the Harris no tax on tips proposal as a copycat. Technically, there are some differences. She would not eliminate the tax on payroll taxes. That's Social Security and Medicare. She would limit it to make sure that it's really just those hospitality and service workers that traditionally have been tipped. There's some concern that under Trump's proposal, hey, all of us here at the table can go to our employer and ask Bloomberg to pay us in tips or overtime or whatever it is.
Put a tip jar on my desk.
Can we do that?
There's some displacement of salary into tips or salaried workers into hourly workers under this overtime proposal. So there's a lot of concerns about that. Trump's no tax on tips proposal, we polled in our swing states poll last month. It was extremely popular and bipartisan in the popularity of that proposal.
I think Maya McGinnis's group scored just on tips alone. It was between $100 and $200 billion in deficit spending. To your point earlier, you add all this stuff up, and this is another situation of a ballooning deficit. But that is something that both campaigns potentially have in common. They haven't told us how to pay for this stuff. Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill. We'll bring prices down, and we'll put Elon Musk to work. We'll find waste and fraud, and then we'll grow out of the rest of it. But economists don't speak that language, do they?
Well, this is a 40-year-old debate that we have, probably even older, about the Laffer curve and whether or not you can grow yourself and you can have some supply side.
The argument is, if there was no pandemic, by the way, that the tax cuts would have paid for themselves. That's what you're hearing from the campaign.
That is an argument, but even that would have not close the deficit, right?
Correct.
I mean, so at some point, if you are a deficit hawk and a debt hawk, you have to look at not just maintaining the status quo, but beginning to reduce the share of the deficit as a share of GDP. And so, yes, Trump thinks we can grow our way out of it. And conversely, on the Harris side of the equation, to tax the rich enough to offset it. I don't think the math works on either side. But this is a problem that, as you point out, Maya McGinnis and the budget hawks that are out there have, that neither side is really particularly serious about the national debt anymore. We're all sort of, whether you call it that or not, there's modern monetary theory sort of rearing its head into these economic proposals.
Yeah.